My name is Emily McAllister. I'm a real estate agent here in Pitt County. And this year for 2026, our passion project is to sit down and talk to local leaders about what they do and how their positions affect the growth of Greenville and kind of what does the growth of Greenville look like over the next several decades. So our guests today are Chris Nunnally, so that's how you pronounce your last name, and Rochelle Brown. So these guys are county commissioners. Chris, tell us a little bit about your position, what district you represent, and how long you've held that.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Emily, so much for having both of us today.
Of course.
So I represent District 3 on the County Commission. This is my 7th year on the board. And so that area is kind of on the eastern side of Greenville, really from the downtown area of Greenville out kind of toward the city boundary, maybe a little bit of Simpson and a little bit of north of the river.
Okay.
But it is a district that is similar to a lot of the county, where we've got kind of it reaches from the urban core out into kind of a more rural community. So we've got kind of a mixture of representation in my district.
Okay. And what is your day job, if you don't mind me calling it that?
Oh my gosh, day jobs.
It's going to take the whole
day
time.
jobs, yeah. No. So I am an attorney,
Okay.
and I specialize in dental practice transitions and anything related to dental
Okay.
Dental practices. So small business.
Okay.
And I also teach. I teach at the Oakwood School, and I have a studio in West Greenville where I teach cello. I was a professional cellist
cool.
in my last life. So
That's super awesome.
So those are my day jobs.
Okay. Rochelle, what district do you represent?
Well, I have to also say thank you so much for what you're doing and all the content that you're putting out and educating everybody. I just so love it and appreciate it. So thanks again. I have to just echo that. So I actually have what's called the super district.
Okay.
So it's B. So you have the letters and the numbers, which were super confusing. And I know a lot of people don't understand those. I didn't. So I have B, which is 3 and 6. So it actually encompasses a lot of Commissioner Nunley's district, all of it, and then goes up to the Craven County line. And I like to use, kind of as far as like landmarks and roads and such. So if you kind of think about it, up to the Craven County line, we go down all the way over what would be like Evans Street is kind of that cutoff, if you will. And then all of Greenville down into even like First Street, Cypress Glen, and then of course all on up. So Simpson, Grifton, Grimesland. So have one of the super districts. So a fairly large area of Pitt County that we represent. We have about 45,000 registered voters in that area.
Okay. And what is your day job? Or day jobs?
So this is like a very new way for me to answer, but after almost 20 years, I've just recently sold my hospitality company.
Okay.
So I had a small business here in Pitt County for almost 20 years. Started with my family here in Greenville in 2007. And so we had Rep Express Catering, 400 St. Andrews. And so we have just recently decided that we are up for new chapters, and we have a wonderful new owner that has taken that over. Same staff, same business, but it's just not my family anymore.
Right.
So I'm kind of in a transition right now,
Right.
Which has allowed me the last 3 months to really dive in more to being a commissioner and being the voice of the people, which I've really, really enjoyed.
Right. And the county commissioner seats are elected positions.
Yes.
So as far as your vision for the county and moving forward, what do you feel like is the vision of your constituents for Greenville and for the county, and what do you feel like is all of the ways that you are willing to accomplish that goal?
You go first.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to. So I'll look back to my initial, I guess, reason for wanting to join the county board, and that was back in it's been a while ago. But my first election, I was really concerned with city and county growth, that there was not enough collaboration between the city and the county. I was hearing from a lot of constituents, a lot of members of the business community, that what we really wanted to see was the Greenville area and the Pitt County area to operate more as a unit, really be collaborative and work as a team to help attract employers to our area, to help lay a groundwork that's very business friendly, to help us continue to grow jobs and opportunity in our region. And that was what really drove me to get involved with the county board. And that's been really critical, I guess, the piece the driving force between my entire time on the board to date, is really working to make sure that our staff, we have a fantastic staff, by the way, at the county, that our staff and city staff are no longer working in silos, that we're really working as a team, whether it's third party like the Greenville ENC Alliance, third party developments, NCDNP, anything that can help lay the groundwork for better and bigger opportunities here in the region.
Right. Okay.
So I actually had the desire to run because I had what I would call definite challenges, which I know we like to refer to as opportunities, right? But I'm a mom of 3, and so I have children at all 3 levels. So I'm Wintergreen, Hope, and DH Conley. So I have the intermediate, the middle school, and the high school. And so in just bringing that perspective as a parent, a working mom, a small business owner here in Pitt County of almost 20 years. So I had some perspective of challenges that, if I'm being very honest and transparent, were starting to make us think about other areas to move to in North Carolina. And I thought, we have an option here. We can either show our kids that we run to what might be, the grass is greener out there somewhere, or we can show them that we dig in and we get to work and we have a voice and we make the place that we, have had our children and raised them, and to be a better place to live. And so that's what we decided to do. And so it was not just me running. It was actually a family conversation with all 3 of my girls and my husband, and that we were going to do this together. And so taking input from all of their friends and the voices of Pitt County was really, really important in my decision to run.
Right.
And bringing that perspective. The small business, the economic development side is obviously very important to me. I think that the growth is definitely very important, not just in the larger industry, but in the small business. So incentives that we can offer is very important to me. Being fiscally sound with the tax dollars is very, very important to me. When you look at the budget, you have over 60% of the ad valorem tax, and I think that being on the backs of taxpayers is not ideally where I think all of our revenue should come from.
Right.
So looking at the prioritization of what the county has was a great opportunity for me to get involved, and I had a lot of passion behind that. Public safety is another one. Again, going back to being a mom of 3 kids, right? And so a lot of the experiences that we had in the school systems, and then I would say lastly, I could talk forever, but quality of life.
Right.
And not just, hey, what can a family of 5 do, but what about our ECU grads and retaining them? What about the big business and getting all the families to want to come here? And looking at what we have to offer in the county, because we're, as a county commissioner, in charge of the future growth.
Right.
So many different things that kind of drove me to saying, yeah, my time is now, my season is now to run.
Right. Quality of life is something that comes up a lot in some of the conversations that I have had over the last several months for every demographic in the county, but specifically what I do. I have what I feel like is a very unique temperature gauge on some of the feedback between the 25 and 40-year-old age demographic, which is, for whatever reason, very much a challenge to get them kind of civically involved. And I think part of that, the reason for that, is that there's a lack of, there's a gap in education and in understanding. So being a county commissioner, what are some of the things that you guys have direct control or influence over that could better our quality of life?
You want to go? You hit 1st
We'll
this
just
time.
talk back and forth.
Okay. So I think we have, first, primarily, it's understanding what we don't have control over, right? I think we have to understand where we have to work with those members of the community, whether or not it's private business interest, whether or not it's the city of Greenville, whether or not it's maybe it's other private citizens or nonprofits or religious groups that can service needs that are needed, right?
Right.
But really make sure that those that are best position our community to make sure that we have the very best front porch for those that are looking to stay in our community and continue to grow families here. Make sure we're putting our best foot forward. But it's not a simple formula.
Right.
And I think that what we can do is continue to work on, and Rochelle referred to this, is work on keeping our cost of living as low as possible, while at the same time making significant investments that increase the quality of life. I like to think of expenditures that we take when I'm weighing whether or not we're going to go down a path. Is it an investment in the community? Are we expending dollars that are going to have a really good, it's not a return on investment the same as you would as a person, right? But it's what is our community? What is this expenditure going to mean for our community in 10 years, 20 years down the line? Because really, Greenville, Pitt County is in a real critical moment of growth. We're transitioning from a really small college town to really a medium-sized metropolitan area, and that means that we're in the market for big employers. We're in the market for people that are looking to maybe get out of a major metropolitan area that has a lot of congestion, that can maybe move here, get some of the benefits of living in a larger town with more entertainment options, more things that are attractive to young professionals. And that you hope, if you grow properly and you have and you make sure you keep your cost of living low by not overburdening folks with at the tax level, you hopefully get a situation where you have a little bit of synergy and you create an exciting place to live. I really love it here. I grew up here. I lived in New York City for years, and I was really happy to move back here. But there are a whole host of things that I missed when I moved back. Moving back to this area, I missed having a vibrant hospitality scene. I missed having, things that, on a Friday and Saturday night, something to do other than, I love pirate football, but what do we have to offer rather than what the university is already doing? And so anything that we can do as a government unit, whether or not it's getting out of the way when it's appropriate to get out of the way, or where we can support to have more things to offer for that, really, I mean, you said the 25 to 40 segment, that's where communities need to focus in order to offer the most, because that's where the kids are, that's where we are. So I think that's really in this next phase of growth and development. I think and we're going through the strategic planning process right now at the county, but that's really something that I think needs to be front and center of our board. And I know that at least for me, it really stays really present in all the decisions that I make.
So he said a lot of good stuff there. I'm just going to kind of grab on to the strategic plan. So for the first time ever, Pitt County has got a strategic plan coming out. I mean, that's the answer right there. Because the content and the data from that plan is all of your voices. So really, to Chris's point, it's what does that say that Pitt County wants, and then us either delivering it on those action items or getting out of the way and allowing that to happen, be it with public-private partnerships, whatever the case is that we can do to support, to make sure that whatever that data portrays is what we actually act on. And I think that that's the key, in my opinion. The only other thing I'll say is not just thinking in our silo of Greenville or Pitt County, but really doing a good job of benchmarking in the East and thinking about being an advocate for Eastern North Carolina. And I think that those two key things combined is just going to be crucial in what the next decade looks like here in Greenville. And I think we all want the same things. You know, I mean, when we traveled around and we got the data points, not only from the strategic plan perspective, but we also are currently doing one from a Board of Education perspective. And what does the educational side of things need? Because obviously we all agree that if we don't invest in our children, I mean, that is the county's number one priority is education, as it is actually at the state level right now. So you're going to see a lot of funds being allocated to, even more so, to the education side. So what does that look like? How does that all coincide? And what does a plan forward look like? And then prioritizing appropriately and making sure that we not just address it now, but we have our plan to address it down the road 10, 20 years.
I think it's interesting that you use Greenville as kind of a benchmark for the East. And what radio station is it that uses, Beast of the East? Like that is essentially what we need to begin to think of Greenville branding wise because all of these smaller municipalities filter into us for education and healthcare. And so that is for sure something that needs to be discussed. But I think as far as, I'm curious what some of the data points look like on the strategic plan, because two of the really big hot button topics have always been schools and roads. And for most people, we think of those things being dealt with at the state level, but you guys have a lot of influence over some of those things, like roads in particular, as far as submitting projects for the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Project. That's what that is. So tell us a little bit about like how that works as far as the process for submitting proposals to the state, and the timeline and all of those things.
Yeah, so I'll start first this time if we want to even kind of go back and forth. I will start, though, with making it very simple. When I first became a commissioner, they send you off to training. And one of the very first things that they say to you is, you are not in the roads business. And it's funny because I have to repeat that a lot. I wish I had control over things that unfortunately at the county level we do not.
Right.
And so now you have the RPO and you have the MPO. So you have
explain the acronyms.
So the Greenville Metropolitan Urban.
It's a long thing.
The Greenville Urban
Explain that to me.
Metropolitan Association. Yeah. So the MPO is basically federally mandated at about 50,000 or more. Okay, so that's the larger organization, and then you have the RPO, which is more for the smaller communities. And Chris, correct me if I'm incorrect in saying any of this. However, so we have the MPO. And then we have the action committee. Okay. So basically, it's a prioritization of projects and proposals that have been submitted using data points to go ahead and say, okay, this is what we're going to approve, and then it's basically at a 10-year run, but then they re-look at it every 2 years, I do believe. Okay. So now, as far as who makes up those MPOs, you have a commissioner that will sit on that particular board, which, or as a liaison, if you will, but it's actually made up of the municipality itself and its staff members. Okay. And so, again, not a whole lot of control as far as the county level goes. Right. And there's no funding then that comes from the county level. So that is traditionally then on the municipality as well as the state level. Right. So that's kind of what, it is in a nutshell. I know it can get kind of convoluted. Yeah. Right. And feel free to add any to that if you would like.
And so I'll just piggyback a little bit on that. That's absolutely correct. And there's within the MPO and the RPOs, right? Okay. And again, this is the Pitt County being one of these counties where we have metropolitan area and we have rural area, right? And the problem with having a lot of rural area is that no one funds those roads other than the state, right? We do not have funding authority. We don't have the ability to tax raise funds to do anything on those roads. What we do have is a fantastic staff that really searches out and works on these data points that sit on both the MPO and the RPO in our region, right? Okay. And our staff are a part of kind of the administrative body that really is in the weeds on what projects based on congestion metrics, based on forecast of future growth, what the current status of the roadway is, whether or not it needs to be repaired based on its use, the amount of weight, whether or not there's going to be industrial development. Those are all things that the staff looks at, and ultimately those are ranked by the state when it goes up to that program, right? In terms of priority. Our board members and our county board, we are on it. The members that sit there on what's called an advisory committee. Right. Okay. So the staff are in the weeds on all of those metrics. And then they come and present to the advisory committee, who are people that are interested, our county boards being those. And so we have people that sit on both. Right. And those projects, as our staff identifies them, or we identify them through communication with our constituents, right? Hey, we noticed that on this particular roadway, traffic's backing up because of the drop off and pick up and release at school. We need to do something there. It's identified. There's a congestion problem that goes to the MPO or the RPO, most likely if it's county RPO, and then we push that to the state and hopefully gets identified as a project. Right. As we all know in this community, state projects are notoriously slow. Right. But but we do have a number of projects that are
We do.
on that right now.
We do.
Right. So I was looking at that list, that STIP list, and some of the big ones over the next 10 years are the Fire Tower Road widening, Allen Road widening, Highway 43 between Bells Fork intersection and Worthington Road.
Yep.
Right.
Those were just some of the big
There's
ones.
also
that
11 into 13.
Yeah.
11, yeah. Highway 11.
11 into 13.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the two interstate connectors. That'll
Okay.
be at a connector between the two
So,
interstates.
and correct me if I have a incorrect understanding of this, but so the way that in my research I was kind of interpreting it is that you guys, while you don't have the ability to earmark funding for specific projects, you mentioned the advisory board and feedback from the constituents, you can go to the MPO and RPO and say, hey, I think we need to look at this. And then you guys have, at that point, it becomes kind of a investigatory type process where then those boards go in and they do research and collect data and all of those things. Then they have to submit to the state and raise their hand and say, this is a project that I think funds need to be earmarked for over the next 10 years. And that is there any, I'm going to use the word lobbying, which I hate to use because I feel like that has become a dirty word, but I feel like just over the last couple of months, what I have learned is that this is not a situation of Greenville is 15% of the population of the state of North Carolina, and so we should get 15% of the DOT funds to do projects for what we want them for. That there's a lot of involvement of somebody has to actually go and say, no, this is what we need, and plead the case. Am I understanding that correctly, or am I not following that?
Well, I would say, too, looking at our representative on the DOT, which it should be an advocate for the area, which I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is Candy Smith. So I do believe that she is currently one of our representatives on the DOT. So we, should be reaching out to her or whoever, is our local representative and making sure that they are advocating and or lobbying on our behalf. But once it is actually taken to the Technical Action Advisory Committee, that is where it's actually voted on to then be moved up.
Okay.
The technical, process, if you will.
Right.
However, I do believe that our representatives that sit on DOT should be made aware as well.
Sure.
Of course.
And being that advocate.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the future projects, so let's say, for example, I was driving down, what is the road between the Old Tar Road and Dixie Queen? That stretch of Winterville?
Yeah.
It would be really awesome if we had a bike lane in that stretch of Winterville, like what they have in Emerald Isle, because there's all that residential area, not for that street and for that strip of Main Street between Old Tar Road and downtown Winterville. Now that's a city, municipality. So that would be the city's responsibility to raise their hand, or do they work in conjunction with you? And forgive me if these are silly questions, but these are questions that the community, I'm sure would say, okay, if this is what I want, where do I go?
Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in that because this is something that, being a city resident, and the city of Greenville deals with this all the time, and we're dealing with one on the Dickinson Avenue project, right? It's not a county issue; it's a county issue in that road starts in the city and goes out to other places, and there are businesses that are serviced by the same road, so there's connectivity problems. But if you've got an issue with it, just because it's in the city doesn't mean that it's a city issue, and I think that's really important to know. There are roadways in every city that are totally funded by at least the initial build out by city infrastructure,
right?
And then state maintenance comes in and takes those over, right? But a roadway like Dickinson Avenue or a roadway like Memorial Drive, those are all state maintained roads. If we had a problem with what's going on there, or if we wanted to put a bike lane there, the city council or the mayor of the city of Greenville or the council in Winterville or the commission in Winterville, I think that's what they go by, or the mayor, really has very little authority other than just knocking on the door of their representative in Raleigh and say, hey, we need to do something here. We need to do something to change it. I think that's one of the things we struggle as as local officials, where we don't have direct control other than trying to leverage the community support behind a policy. Hey, let's do it this way, and then try to let's communicate with our officials up in Raleigh.
Right.
But I think it's important too. I think that especially now in the 21st century, everyone wants. There are a lot of problems in the world, right? I think it's really important that when we are advocating, that we're doing so in a way that's like we're doing it based on the metrics, right? Mm-hmm. We go to the board. We can also be the voice of our constituents and help that. But we can really say, hey, this is why we need to do it, and we can be really effective in that advocacy,
right?
And I know from my experience on the board, all of my representatives have been very, at the state level, they've been more than willing to work on Eastern issues, right, regardless of their background. Yeah. I feel like that if I need to pick up the phone and call someone and talk about something like that at the state level, there's not a problem.
Right.
I do have to say one thing and clarify, just in case you ever, are a part of this situation. And you're like, Rochelle said that they had nothing to do with roads. But there is a small little intermittent area where a contractor, if they have a neighborhood where the contractor then is finishing off that neighborhood, and it's a handover, if you will. Okay. So the county will then come in and approve that process before the state then takes over, or the city takes over, or whatever the case is. So just also wanted to clarify that. Of course. It's just a small little in between stage, if you will, where the county can actually be involved in the road.
So it sounds like your overall influence and or lack thereof is really more of a position of just of putting pressure on the powers that be to get the things that we need. So it's less about, you don't have direct control, which I did understand previously, but you don't have direct control about what projects get selected and all that kind of thing. But, putting pressure, making suggestions, and then putting pressure and advising or advocating for certain projects based off of the feedback of your constituents and other data.
Absolutely.
So schools would be the second thing. And from what I understand, you guys are very heavily involved with county schools and those types of things. So that is another really big piece of feedback that I get on social media, especially when it comes to the drastic increase in residential homes all throughout the county. That's always a comment every single time there's new development. Well, what are we going to do? They've annexed all of that property on Mills and Hudson's Crossroads roads. There's a lot of, I'm going to use the word negative feedback from some of the local people that are directly affected by that, about traffic and, the increased weight that puts on the schools. I confirmed that there is a new D.H. Conley campus in the works. What can you guys tell me about that as far as where that might go? What does a timeline look on that? All that kind of stuff.
So as a mom of D.H. Conley, first let me say a shout out to Dr. Lassiter and the Board of Education for how they are addressing the growth out specifically in this district. And I think that absolutely, yes, changes are going to be made. What those changes look like obviously are not concrete. What they've actually done is they have done a tour around the district to go out and to receive feedback from not just children and parents, but from educators and stakeholders. And this doesn't just affect us with children, right? It affects all of us with homes and our home, our value of our properties, so on and so forth, economic development drivers and such. To your last comment really quick, though, if I could, the concern for infrastructure, all rightfully so, and what this means for our area, I think is going to be key to create that roundtable that hasn't really yet happened from the county. Yes, we don't have direct control over roads, right? We've clarified that, but what we do have is the data, the trends, the history, the zoning, the planning expertise to come together with those who will and do, and making sure that we are appropriately handling the growth. And I think that that's just, those are discussions that are in the mix right now. How can we better collaborate to prepare for this growth that has already occurred? D.H. Conley, for example, just because that's the one you bring up, I do believe is over 130% capacity. So it's working because as as a mom, I can just say you have the 300 plus kids, and don't quote me on the number, that are moving over to the Pitt County, or to Pitt Community College,
Right.
and taking those classes. So it's all working.
Right.
However, it's we are over, and so making that move, and then what the word is obviously then making DH Conley the new hope, and then
Yes.
Winter Green, and so on and so forth, and making those transitions, because it's not just Conley that's obviously
Right.
overcapacitated. It's over how many little people in the Winter Green
Right.
area alone it's incredible. So when you look at that and what that expansion is going to look like, we are now to the stage, I think, of planning, and as far as how will we go about that. When you look at what the Board of Education has presented to the Board of Commissioners, we are in charge of the capital needs. Okay.
For funding.
For funding.
Okay.
It is our number one funding if you look at our budget.
Right.
But it is technically capital needs and
Right.
improvements. Operation is not technically supposed to fall on the county, which is a whole nother
Right.
conversation. So just to clarify the two, when you look at what the Board of Education has presented to the Board of Commissioners, it is some astronomical number, $753 million, I do believe, over the course of the next 15 years,
Okay.
that Pitt County as a whole is going to have to figure out. Right?
Okay.
Going back to that strategic plan, how do we address that need?
Right.
And we are already in discussion. Just if you look at the minutes of our last meeting, which will, I do believe, come up at the end of this month, how we fund will change and will realign to be more parallel with how the Board of Ed, or how education actually handles their budget. So
Okay.
more on a coding basis, if you will, versus just, hey, lump sum.
Okay.
But to answer your question, there's actually, or to address, I guess, an issue maybe I didn't even know before I technically got into the nitty gritty. There is no accountability from the Board of Commissioners over to the Board of Education and how we handle that funding currently. So the money is given, and then it is up to them to actually allocate those funds as they see fit.
Okay.
So just to also clarify
Okay.
that.
No, that's-
so yeah, I could talk forever. Again, I'll stop right there and let you kind of jump in there.
No, and that's the perfect framework. I think it's important to understand that. And there are two elected bodies, right?
Right.
The
Right.
Board of Education is
Sounds
elected.
like we need to talk to somebody from the Board of Education.
Right.
Yes.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Two elected bodies, and our statutory mission is to make sure that all of the stuff that happens can happen because
Right.
there are four walls and a roof over all of the things that the Board of Education is supposed to do inside of these schools, right?
Right.
And so I think economic development, we often talk about like, well, how can we attract more employers? How can we get that next big thing? In growth, population growth, well, how can we deal with people wanting to move to a certain part of the county? What can we
Schools
do
are-
about this growth, right?
Schools are a
Right.
very big part of that.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
a
are.
huge part of it. And so it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit chicken or the egg, a little bit.
Okay.
Because each individual family makes a determination about, where they want to move based on a whole set, a very, very broad, maybe imprecise
Right.
method of like, oh, I just want to be there. A big part of that is what school's there, right?
Right.
But that's not the only thing.
Of course.
And so I think that when we look at, in particular, where the growth is happening in Pitt County, it's our job as county commissioners, in my view, that we make sure that we're aware of the growth trends, that in our planning, that we're making sure that we are putting forward plans that are predictable.
Okay.
For developers, and not just for developers, but for the school board and for other decision makers. When how are we going to build out these capital plans so that we
Right.
can do it? The number that comes before us often is scary, right? When you think about how much money is needed.
Yeah.
But I think we need to also take a position that it's not really scary if we look at it in terms of we're growing, we want growth. You really can't have it both ways, right?
No, of
I mean,
course.
totally. But you can do it in a way that you can preserve the elements of the community that you're there in the first place,
Right.
right? And I think that I think that it's important that we have facilities in place that we can have a top-rate public education here in the county for every single student. That means that they're not at 130% capacity. We need to make sure that we're budgeting and that we are ahead of the trends, overbuilding at times to make sure that we're able to fill that additional capacity. So in this next round of building, I know that one of the things that we'll want to see is that as we're building that strategic plan out, is the plan for 2030, or are we really trying to build for 2035, 2040?
Right.
You know, DH Conley didn't have to grow for a long time.
Right.
Okay. But you have a similar situation happened in the city of Greenville when it's actually a really similar shift. If you looked at what happened with the old Rose High School, turned into apps, and then they built on to another one, which is a really efficient use of buildings. It saves costs. So I'm in support of the school board going that route as a county commissioner, because that means that we're being efficient with our resources. But it's not going to be enough. Doing this one build's not going to be enough. We need to make sure that we are investing at a level that we don't have to come and fix things, because costs only go up. And when we're responsive to growth and we're not predicting that growth, it's more expensive. It's more expensive to the taxpayer. And if it's more expensive to the taxpayer because it's our job, we have to raise those funds. And where else do we get the funds but the ad valorem tax? Right. And so it's really incumbent on staff and the commissioners that are elected to be really mindful of these problems, so that when we make the decision to build the next round of schools and work with the school board on that, I think collaboration that should come up all the time now for the next 40 years, because Greenville, Pitt County, everything is connected. Collaboration is absolutely important, right? And then that makes sure that we're building things at the right capacity.
I think it's also really important just to add that not just addressing the growth that we're seeing daily coming into Pitt County, but also the other 38 schools and the needs that they have. And so,
so we did a video a couple weeks ago about, there was a news article that came out. It's like the county had identified $5.5 million or however much money it was, I can't remember now, worth of capital improvements that were needed for the county. And part of it was the land acquisition for a new D.H. Conley campus. But there was millions of dollars worth of infrastructure repair and updating and all of those kind of things needed for other campuses. And Aiden Elementary is another one that has come up regularly in conversation with just the explosive growth up and down Highway 102 and all of the new students that are filtering into that campus. So when we see articles like that where it says the county has identified this much money, those are the numbers that are being put on your desk, where the school board is saying, okay, this is what we need. And then it's your job, I guess, to approve or deny those funds. And so when you talk about having to raise those funds, the only, correct me if I have a wrong understanding of this, but the only availability for that is for the property tax. Or is there state funding that's involved? How does that work?
So I have my own train of thought on this, and I'm not even so certain. I'm speaking solely as myself here when I say this. If you look at the pyramid of prioritization set out by the county, the Board of Commissioners, if you will, I will boldly say I'm very transparent about this. I don't necessarily, although I think they are absolutely all very, very important, and I wish I could put them all at number one, I do believe that economic development, for example, is too far down the list, because how are we going to pay and support and make the revenue to support all of these needs up here, right? So to me, that's really important. And we are doing a great job as far as recreation. And you know, we have our two twin centers that have gone up, and so many other things that have been added to the county, which is an added asset and benefit to our families and our residents of Pitt County. However, you know, as a mom, for example, who pays for the volleyball, I expect to pay for that, right? I don't want to pay a crazy amount. No family does. However, when you look at our service and our fees for this is just one example, it's less than 1% of our overall revenue when you look at our budget. Okay, so why can we, which is grossly lower than most counties. So this is just, you know, one kind of passionate point of mine, but why can we not increase that to take that off the backs of the taxpayers, and be a little bit creative as far as how we can increase our revenue. And that's just one example as to how I think we could maybe tweak some things just a little bit.
So you're saying you feel like there's opportunity, like I enrolled Maverick in like the Future Stars soccer thing. So instead of the registration being $50, it's 85.
And maybe that's too drastic, but you know what I mean? Yeah, a little bit.
But
just
using
a little
those
bit.
alternative forms of revenue to help provide us with some funds.
Right, offset.
It seems like maybe you guys have differing opinions on.
Well,
I love it. I think it's
that's what makes the world go round.
So I think that it's so to get back to your first question, the county has to raise those. The funds don't come from the state.
Okay.
Years ago, there was a bill that was passed that there has to be a certain class size, and in order to meet that standard, it's put on all the counties in the state of North Carolina to come up with the funds to be in compliance.
Okay.
And at the state level, and this is something that our lobbyists are always arguing at the state level, we don't want unfunded mandates passed down to the county. That is just one example of an unfunded mandate that has to do with brick and mortar. We're responsible for brick and mortar. You say we need more because we need the class size at this amount, but there's no funds coming with that requirement, right? So it's absolutely incumbent on us to have the funds. Roofs, all of that stuff helps pay for it, right?
Okay.
I think that sound fiscal policy it's not a one or the other. We definitely need to be mindful of fees, right? What we're charging. I think that in particular with youth programs, I'm a coach. I want to work with our youth. I don't want our sports in the United States to continue to be purely pay for play.
Right.
I think the city of Greenville has done a really good job in their parks of recreation at ensuring that accessibility to things like the Future Stars is affordable.
Right.
I think that it's never going to raise enough through the fee schedule to pay for it in its entirety without boxing out entire segments of the population.
Of course.
I think that, and I think that we just have to be mindful of it. It's not an either or. We can't. It's just like the city had issues with, like, are we going to raise a whole bunch of money with parking downtown?
Right.
That's going to be a great way to raise money. Well, like maybe in theory, but what are you doing on the backside of that? So I think that it's not that I disagree. I think that we have to have an approach that's belt and suspenders to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with the fees that we're charging, that we're not so far down that we're not able to continue to support the programs, right?
Right.
A program's not worth anything if you don't have quality people running those programs, right? And so if raising, I'll just use Future Stars as an example.
Right.
So right now, Future Stars is totally reliant on volunteer coaches, right?
Yes.
And so if there were a way to increase the fee that you didn't box out families, but you maybe had like coaches that were hired with a little bit higher quality, would that not be a better program for your state overall? And I'm not saying to do that, right? I'm definitely not saying that, but that's just an example of how sometimes maybe an additional expenditure for a better product is better for our community.
I think just overall, I don't want to speak for every single person, but I think most people don't necessarily have a problem with the price increase if they see a value in exchange in as a result of that price increase. People are very, very bothered by, I'm just going to use the rent example as something, because that's something that affects my day to day. You know, somebody gets a rent raise, but nothing has been done. That's a lot more difficult for someone to swallow versus, hey, I'm going to raise your rent $75 because I just put granite countertops in your house.
That's right. If it's a tangible something you can hold or see.
Even if it's more, sometimes I think it's more of an emotional play. It doesn't even necessarily have to, we need to make people feel good about the extra money that they're spending and feel like it's making a difference, like they're getting something for it. Nobody wants to feel like, I have to expend extra money and just because why? Because you said so? That's never a good feeling. So just to recap and just make sure I have a good understanding. So when capital improvements, and when we're talking about that, we're talking specifically about buildings and infrastructure. That is the responsibility of the county. We obviously have the education lottery and other funds that do come from the state to help fund our school system. Or we don't? Do we not?
We both started tweaking.
I mean, we are not as a county fully funding our entire school system, all of the labor, all of everything completely alone. Are we?
No, but capital we do for the most part.
Capital we do.
And I will say that there are also operational costs that the county is currently picking up as well.
Okay. Are we supposed to be picking them up?
And we're picking up salaries. We're paying teacher supplement salaries.
Why, if
so
we're
that
not
we're competitive?
If that's not our responsibility, if that's not the way it's meant to be, why are we?
The reason that we come in and pitch in, whether or not it's for operations or for teacher supplements or anything like that, while we're not directly responsible for it, we feel like we're responsible to make sure that we have the best teachers in place for our students that live here. Right. And if there's a way that we can ensure that we have the best teachers here by being more competitive so that they stay here rather than go teach in Wilson County, we need to do that. It's the same thing that happens in economic development where there's business incentives to locate here, right? We may offer a tax incentives to be here and that to try to keep you here. Because we view that as an investment in our community by keeping the better here so that it doesn't go elsewhere. Because it's a battle, right? Yeah. It's a battle.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
And if I may jump in just one second, not just our teachers, but you have your classified and unclassified staff, right? And so this board just recently, I'm going to say
the last budget.
It was the last budget. We had approved the $3.1 million to go towards our bus drivers and all of our unclassified staff, which is very, very important in, again, retaining the growth that Pitt County is seeing and making sure that we're bringing the resources, the best resources that we possibly can for our kids.
Right. So. And so when all of that money, which the county is responsible for approving, then that money goes to the school board and then they are responsible for divvying up in the way that it's been requested.
That is correct.
Okay.
We have absolutely no say over where that money actually goes, but that is the reason for the allocation.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it.
No,
I mean, it's a good way to not get it, right? Is to like give it and then not use it, right? It's kind of like,
No, but I
short.
Stranger things have happened. So I just want to clarify. I'm just trying to, if I am a resident, which I am, but if I was somebody that had no familiarity, no like even base understanding of the way all of these entities work together, which is very, very overwhelming, and all of the things that people have control over and the things that they don't, and the way that they have to kind of mesh together in order to, I'm going to take from here, but then I have to take from here, and all of this. It's a lot, and it is difficult to follow. And if you're somebody that's like, I'm tired and I just want to go to work and send my kid to school and go home and like have a reasonable utility bill and tax bill and all that kind of stuff, I can very much understand why a lot of people are just like, that's over there and I don't have time for that and I don't have the bandwidth for it and all those kind of things. But Dylan Godley, do you know who Dylan is? I know you're familiar with him.
The name rings a bell.
He's the CFO for E.R. Lewis, and he's on the board for Greenville Utilities and does a couple other things. Him and I have become somewhat decent friends over the last couple of months, and he refers to me as Dino Nugget Chef because he feels like I take very complex ideas and can present them in a way that are very digestible for somebody that doesn't have a good baseline understanding of whatever it is we're talking about. So that's was kind of where this was born. Was I was like, okay, well, I can sit down and talk to these people, and I can filter through and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is what all of this actually means. Right. So beyond those two things, obviously the other thing that we get a lot of feedback on through social media is like entertainment value. As far as things that are going on within the county. What can, if anything, you guys do as far as economic incentives for, we've made videos on Costco and all of that kind of stuff. How involved are you guys with that type of process?
Well, I think being ready is key. And I think that our county does a great job of that. And we are currently, I would say, if not every meeting, almost every meeting, Kelly Andrews, who is the Director of Economic Development for Pitt County government, always is able to present new opportunities that we can either, start to look at and really assess, is this a good move for Pitt County, or is this a good partnership to link arms with? And I think that we do a really good job in thinking ahead and saying, okay, we have the mega site, or, whatever these key things are that you hear all over the place, that we're making moves to think in the future. And I think that we do a good job there. Small business, that's something that I've already mentioned here today, is also something that we're hearing back in the strategic plan that maybe we need to, that's an opportunity for improvement, and making sure that we are more ready or incentivizing there. And I think all of those things play into the economic development. Kids, families wanting to be here, what to do on a Friday night. It's not just shopping and eating, but what else can we see here that's welcomed into Pitt County that will make us just a better place to live, right? And so all of that, I think we do a great job at. How much control over do we have as far as advocating to bring a Costco, for example? And you don't see a lot of that from our particular role, right? When you look at what a county commissioner does, the number one's budget, and then you look at the education funding and the public safety and so on and so forth. So we're really, and then of course we do plan for the growth. So making sure that we're making right decisions. So places like a Costco wants to come here. Right. However, how, individually do we get involved in being an advocate for those things? I think that that's probably more up to the individual. I definitely have had the things that people have brought to me, and I've gotten on those trains, so to speak, and been an advocate, but that's not a technical role that I see all of us taking as a unit, if you will. And maybe you have a different answer there.
No, and I think that, and I like to use examples of like, we never had it until we had it. I think of the Trader Joe's that just came, right? That's the one everyone thinks about. And this is something that we're experiencing now as a community because of the growth, because of the good work that's been going on, because of the collaboration. We're seeing more and more of that. I know that, but we're still like a county of 200,000 people. We're not a county of 500,000 people. We're still a relatively small county when we blow it up nationally, right? And we're located in a traditionally, overlooked region, right? Where we didn't have the infrastructure. Now, all the things are coming online. We're getting the interstate infrastructure, which is going to be a big driver for having something like Costco want to come here, right? And we're going to have not one, but two. I think that any time that we can, those are the big picture things that economic development in collaboration with the state, big picture infrastructure things that will make a tremendous difference at attracting, and we're starting to check a box that company that's located somewhere far away has to have checked to even consider coming here, right? And so what can we do as a board and as a governing body to make sure that as a community, we're trying to check the most amount of boxes possible to be considered, right? The constituents should write, and we should write to Costco and do all of those things like that. But at the end of the day, companies come here because they think they can be profitable here, right? And that's based on community metrics. And so if we can make sure that we're working with our partners, and this is happening now, right? It didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. Right. But Pitt County Economic Development, the city of Greenville, the Greenville and ENC Alliance, they are all working together now within the lanes that they're experts in and working collaboratively to make sure that we are hitting those metrics and getting those boxes either built so that they can be checked, or making sure that those that need to know that we're there now, right? And so it's an exciting time to be a resident of Pitt County and Greenville, but it's also like, we should all be impatient too, right? We don't want to sit around and wait for the next great thing, right? So I think some of the things that Rochelle was saying is like, we're being proactive and things are happening. So Yeah, we'll get one. Maybe one day we'll get a Y. Maybe one day
Well,
we'll,
now it's on my list.
Right.
Now I'm going to go home and make
So-
sure I bring that to you.
It's just-
But I think it's also really key just to mention our key players in our community, right? So you got MrBeast. You got, I mean, such amazing as far as what he is bringing to our community. How lucky are we to have him in this community
Right.
and what he brings in? You know, I'm getting ready to share some of those numbers.
I would love to sit down and talk to him if you have a way to make that happen.
Right? Wouldn't we all? And so, you know, but, you know, some of the economic development numbers that he has brought to this county are
Right.
just incredible.
Right.
They're incredible. And he does it so quietly at times. I
Right.
know not when he's blowing up stuff, but at the, you know, but as far as like, you know, the hotel rooms and the trips to Lowe's and, you know, the airport, I mean, all of this combined really, really assists. And he's not the only one. I mean,
Right.
look at all of our players in this community that attribute to the growth of where we can now
Right.
go to the table and have a conversation with a Trader Joe's.
Right.
And so all of that is key. And I think coming together and I just have to echo the, you know, with the ENC, the Alliance and all of the different partnerships that have come together and they're playing their role so specifically.
Right.
So coming to the table so we're not repeating ourselves and not, and we're being efficient with it has just been, it's been so key in getting some really good economic development to come to the area.
Right.
So.
Would you say that, do you feel like just the average resident or your constituent like has a good grasp on what your role is? I'm going to say I feel like most people don't. Just based off this conversation, I mean, I named a couple of things that clearly I did not have a good like understanding of how that worked. But as far as what I think a lot of people would attribute the connotation of, I'm going to use a lesser office. Okay. Obviously it's not a lesser office, but a more local office. I have always been very vocal in arguing that the more local the office, the more important.
Thank you.
What would you say, like if you had to very quickly and concisely explain your role as a commissioner to a resident, what would you say to them and why is it important?
So I think so every year we go to a lot of us go to a national county commission conference.
Okay.
And I think the thing that strikes me about county commissioners, and it is a lesser, I mean, we are definitely at the lowest end of the government totem pole, right? But as county commissioners, I view myself as a resident of Pitt County, right? That has been elected to basically be a voice for the people that elected me, right? Regardless of, and those that didn't vote for me, right?
Right.
That we are uniquely in a position to meet and talk with you in the line at checkout, right? And we're uniquely positioned to be. We might even be a teacher or a coach or might even be doing your formerly, right? But maybe be doing, you know,
Your wedding.
or so county commissioners are truly connected with the community,
Right.
In a way that and I know that it is probably one of the most rewarding, although I don't like campaigning. I'll just go out and say that. I'm not really a politician. I don't like campaigning, but what I really love during campaign season that comes every 4 years for us is really being able to be intentional about going out and listening to people.
Right.
And that is something that that I think uniquely puts the county commission in that government period, right? We are really in a position where you don't have to meet us where we are. We don't have to meet you where we are. We are where you are.
Right.
And so I think that puts us in a place that we're able to, hopefully, if we're doing our jobs well,
Right.
Be in a place where we can make those decisions that affect you the most,
Right.
in a way that's going to be best for our community, right?
Yeah, so going back to what you said, as far as the dino nugget, digestion here, I mean, I think that's honestly how I started. And so
Right.
I really empathize when you say that. And I think that most voters feel the exact same way
Right.
you do and the way I did. I was frustrated. I just wanted to make a difference. I wanted to understand more.
Right.
I am going through life just like you and just like everybody
Right.
else listening. We all want the same things. We want to take care of our families. We just want to be happy. We want to be peaceful and joyful. We want to feel as though that our money is going to a good cause, to forward our legacy as families, as businesses, and so on and so forth. And, I think that to answer your question, do most people know what we do? No, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would be silly of me to expect that of anyone. Most people are always, like, what district do you represent? To answer the question, honestly, I don't even care about those lines. I represent Pitt County. I represent the East. I'm an advocate for the East. I got in this to solely be your voice, not my voice, your voice. And so far in my, time as a commissioner, everything that I've accomplished has been because somebody's brought it to me.
Right.
In God we trust in the courtroom. I didn't know that it wasn't in there. I'm going to be real honest with you. I am a faith believer. Somebody brings that to me, and it's like, darn, in some of our darkest moments, okay, it needs to go. And at least we try. At least we try for the 3 people that brought it to me. And, feasibility study we're working on, improving our response time, being prepared better for public safety, and how can we better support across the county, not just in my district or in, Commissioner such and such district, but as a county. So we're not operating as a silo, so we can come together, we can be stronger linked. And I think that all of these things that we're doing as a unit, as the board, and I have to say a lot of praise for our board. I think that at the end of the day, we're coming together with a really solid arrow that shoots pretty much in the same direction, which is pretty cool to see. Of course, there's politics everywhere. I don't love politics either. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a straight shooter. I like to be transparent.
Right.
I think that stuff belongs over here. And I think that if you're in it for the right reasons, that shouldn't play a role. However, I get it. Politics is politics. But I think for the most part, we all do a really good job of trying to stay focused on the people that elected us. And that's really why we're here. So
I think this has been super helpful. I'm really, really pleased with just all the information that you guys have shared with us today. I love the fact that you said, you guys are in a unique position to, you run into your constituents every day at checking out at Food Lion or, wherever you shop. We saw, it's been a couple months, but I saw Rochelle and Brian at Ford and Chubb eating dinner a little while ago. You guys are members of our community. So I really appreciate you guys coming and sitting down and talking to me. I feel like this is very helpful, not just for me, but hopefully will be very helpful for anybody that was listening. And Thank you. I think we've had a great
for having us.
Great little
so appreciate
hour.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you
course.
very, very much.
Of
It's
course.
been fun.
Yes, we had a good time.
Appreciate it.